I want to talk first about taxes. I have been going hard and heavy on getting property tax relief for disabled veterans. And I rightly get the question from people who aren't disabled veterans, well, what about me? You know, I pay taxes too. What are you doing for me? And so I want to talk for a minute about what I've been doing for the rest of the folks here in Leavenworth that aren't disabled veterans. Because I want to, you know, I serve everybody, not just the veterans, and I want tax relief for everybody because our taxes are too high. The reason I feel so passionately about this really goes back to the reason that I ran for office for the first time. You know, when I was thinking about running, one of my big concerns is that everybody was leaving Leavenworth and everybody was leaving Kansas, frankly. And it's for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is the tax burden. I mean, it costs a lot to own a home here, and it costs a lot to retire here because your Social Security check gets taxed. And, you know, if you're not a military retiree and you're not a state employee retiree, your retirement gets taxed. And so a lot of retirees are packing up and leaving. And when people leave, the services leave. Right before I was elected, Cushing Hospital closed. Now we don't have a hospital in our district. We do have, you know, St. John down the road, but that's not in our district, in 41st District. And you know, since then, a lot of other services have dried up and gone away too. And so the only way you're going to get those services back, I know, like every local election, you hear people, I'm going to get the hospital back. I'm going to get us a grocery in North Leavenworth. Well, you know, unless you're going to open those yourself, you're not going to get those things. Those things come when there are people here that can pay for those services or can pay for those groceries or can pay for those commodities. And so we got to get people back here. And the way you get people back here is you make Kansas and Leavenworth a more tax-friendly environment. And so what have I been doing on taxes? Well, my number one priority is property taxes, because when I'm out going door to door, and I'm already out knocking on doors, the number one thing I hear at every door is either our rent's too high or our property taxes are too high. And obviously rent is a trickle-down effect of high property taxes. And in the off season, you know, when I'm not up for election like I am this year, I'm out campaigning for local candidates, because local candidates are the ones that actually set on a year-by-year basis what our property taxes are right here. And we've also, you know, I'll be helping with some county elections for the same reason, because what those budgets are and what that mill levy is set at is what our property taxes are. But there's some things that we can do at the state level, and that's the first thing that we worked on. A lot of people don't know, and I'm not going to go through the whole, I don't have a whiteboard here, so I can't go through the whole deal, but our property taxes are a sum of several different governments' mill levies. You have the state mill levy, which is 20 mills for education plus 1.5 mills for infrastructure improvement. We have the city mill levy if you live inside the city limits. Not everybody in our district lives in the city limits, but if you live in the city limits, you're paying that. We've got the school district's mill levy, which you're in a school district. You may not be in the Leavenworth School District, you might be in the Easton School District, but you're in a school district and you're paying the majority of your property taxes. The biggest mill levy is going to that school district. And then there's, you know, there's the county mill levy, which is about the same here in Leavenworth as the city mill levy, give or take. All the state can do, all I can do as your state representative is either change how assessments work, or I can change the state mill levy. That's really all we can do at the state level to affect your property taxes. The valuations, you know, because it's your valuations times your mill levy, that's what you're paying for property taxes at each level. Your valuations are actually written into the state constitution. And my ultimate solution, what I hope that one day we're able to do, is cap valuation increases every year. And there was a constitutional amendment that passed the Senate that came over to the House and died a horrible death. It didn't even come to the floor, and I can talk about in question and answers why that is, that would have capped how much your valuation can go up every year at 4%. And to me, that's the perfect solution, because then if the county, the city, the school board wants to raise your taxes, they have to vote to raise the mill levy, and then we vote them all out. But that one stalled in the House, and so we are not going to get that on the ballot this year. It was a constitutional amendment that would be on the ballot for you to vote on this year, but we didn't get that done in the House. It didn't even come to a vote. So all we're left with is the mill levy, the state mill levy. And we passed we actually passed a couple tax packages. We're on our second tax package that would do two things. First, it would actually lower the state mill levy, that 20 mills. And then second, it would increase the amount of your house value that's exempt from that mill levy. So right now in statute, when they value your house, the first $42,000 of that house is not taxed at the state level. It's still taxed at the county and the city school board, but the state mill levy doesn't apply to that first $42,000. What we did in the tax bill is we took that to $100,000. And that's, so at the first $100,000 of your house, you won't pay that 21.5 mills on. Or we're lowering the 20 mills, so it'd be less than that, but you won't pay tax on that. And this is the second time that we've done this and sent it to the governor. And she stood up at the State of the Union and she said she wanted that. And so we sent it to her, and she vetoed it once, and she, spoiler alert, she just vetoed it again. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. But the news just broke 2 hours ago that she vetoed her second tax package. So that's the property tax piece. The second piece is the sales tax. And sales tax, I'm kind of a big fan of, because it hits people at the lower end of the economic ladder hardest, right? And especially food. If you're barely making ends meet, the number one thing you got to buy every month is food to feed your family. And that, 9.5% here in Leavenworth is a huge chunk out of that. And we can't do anything about the Leavenworth piece of it, but 6% of it is the state. A couple years ago, we passed a plan that was going to, over time, take it to zero, and it was going to go to zero at the end of next year. In our tax bill, in both of the tax bills that we sent the governor, it took it to zero on July 1st. So the food sales tax to the state would go away on July 1st. The other piece, and the piece that's really got us fighting with the governor, and the reason that she's just vetoed her second tax package, is income taxes. And, frankly, there's only one piece of the income tax that I really am that concerned about. Because I don't hear from y'all like, hey, my income taxes are too high. I hear my property taxes are too high, so that's what I want to lower. But one thing that I do hear over and over again when I'm out here, especially in my neighborhood, I've got a lot of retirees, I hear the Social Security income tax needs to go away. And for those of you that ain't retirement age, there aren't a lot of us in the room, but for those of you that aren't getting Social Security tax yet, the way the Kansas statute works on Social Security is that if you make $75,000 or less a year, Social Security and everything, you don't pay any income taxes on your Social Security. But as soon as you make $75,001, all of your Social Security income is taxed at whatever bracket you're at. And so that's like $1,000 hit for making $1 extra more than you were supposed to, according to Lord Kelly up there in the Capitol, right? So we needed to get rid of that. And both tax packages that we sent her immediately end the Social Security, the income tax on Social Security, no matter how much you make. It just totally eliminates it. And I'm all for that. That needs to be in the bill. The other piece of it, which some people are passionate about, I'm not quite as passionate about because I never hear about it from you, is the tax brackets and the income tax. And I understand why a lot of folks up there are passionate about it, because it's a big hit, especially on industry, right? If you've got industries that are operating here in the state, suddenly that 5-point-something tax bracket is a huge hit, and eventually it starts driving businesses out of state. So I understand it, but it's not something that I hear every day. So I've not been, standing on the floor of the House demanding that we pass a single tax bracket for everybody, because I don't hear it from you, and I work for you. And so, I'm not as passionate about it. But it is fair. It is the fairest way to tax, right? Everybody's going to have the same tax bracket, and that's the tax bracket, and there's one single rate. And so the first bill that we sent to the governor had a single rate. She is adamant she doesn't want a single rate, and I'll tell you why. The reason that she don't want a single rate is because it's a lot easier to cut everybody's taxes if you have a single rate than it is if you have 3 different brackets. Because when you have 3 different brackets, you can't really touch the highest bracket, because she's going to say, oh, well, you're cutting taxes for the rich, right? And so she's trying to protect tax revenue so that she's got more money to do all the crazy stuff she wants to do. And so that's why she doesn't want it. Now, my only condition, honestly, like I told you, I don't hear y'all telling me, you better not come back here without a single bracket, or we're going to tar and feather you and burn down your house. I don't hear that a lot in my district. But the one thing that I'm adamant about is we're not raising anybody's taxes. Okay, I am not voting to raise any Kansans' taxes. And I want as many low-income people as possible completely removed from the tax rolls. And I'll tell you why. The other thing that I went up there to do when you all saw fit to send me to Topeka was get as many people as possible back to work. We have a huge workforce participation problem in this city, in this state, and in this country. And we need to be doing things to encourage people to work, not discourage people from working. And me and my wife have this conversation all the time. There's nothing more discouraging to working than having to write checks to the government for the money that you just made. And so what I wanted to do is at the low end remove as many people as I could from the tax rolls completely. Because the idea is, right now we're competing for their labor with food stamps. And if they really are in the low end, Medicaid and a bunch of benefits, your free cell phone, all these things that you get if you're at the low end of the spectrum. And I see it every day. I'm talking about my neighbors, and I'm not criticizing them. If I were in their shoes, I can't say that I would make a different, that I'd have a different calculus. If I make this much money, I get this EBT for all this money, and I get a free phone and possibly even free health care. If I make more than that, I don't get any of that stuff, and I've got to make up that gap. So anything that I can do, that we can do as a state to make that gap as small as possible so people are willing to take that leap and go to work instead of, take the check or take the card, is good for Leavenworth, good for Kansas, good for the country. And it's good for those people. It's good for those people. And I'm not hard-hearted. I don't want kids starving. I don't want people starving. But I'll tell you, you steal a person's dignity and you steal a person's hope when you give them a check and tell them don't make any more money. You are putting a salary cap on people's lives. And I think it's immoral. And I think that we need to do everything that we can to lift as many people as we can out of that trap and into growing their lives, growing their families, growing their futures, and giving them hope. And so both tax plans that we sent, because I was screaming about it nonstop, both tax plans that we sent her take tens or hundreds of thousands of people completely off the tax rolls at the low end. By increasing the standard deductions, we more than double, in this tax bill we just sent her, we more than double the standard deduction that you get, whether you itemize or you don't itemize, which is why it's so great. We more than double that, so that we're taking all kinds of people that make under that cap off of the tax rolls, so that you're encouraging work. You're encouraging them to go to work, and when they do start, working to the point where they're on the tax rolls, only this much is getting taxed, not this much. So you're not like all of a sudden, why do we work? We're writing these huge checks to the government every month. We're paying the government for the privilege of working, right? So that's where I'm at on income tax. And again, Social Security is a completely different thing. That thing needed to go away, and every bill we send her does that. Where we ended up, it's not a single rate, which is, she said, I will not sign a single rate. So we gave up on a single rate, and we did a double rate. And the Senate did a triple rate, which is what we have now. We have 3 rates. We honestly have 3 rates. One of the rates is 0, right? There's 0, and then, I don't want to get it wrong. It's 0, and then 5.15 for the middle bracket, which is a drop of 0.1, and 5.55 for the highest bracket, which is a drop of 0.15. Nobody's going to remember that. But so it is still it still is a triple rate. It's just the bottom rate is 0 to do what I'm talking about, which is taking all those people off the tax rolls. So we passed that bill unanimously. Every single Republican and every single Democrat in the House voted yes on that tax package. And I can't emphasize to you how unprecedented that is. That is like, that's like a unicorn, running down the middle of the aisle in the House of Representatives, getting every single person. Even, disabled veteran property tax, when I got it passed last year in the House, there was still one guy that voted against it. There's always one guy, but every single representative voted for that tax package, because it's fair. It's fair, and it targets the things that everybody wants to do. The Senate passed it with a veto-proof majority, but the only reason they passed it with a veto-proof majority is because of our senator, our Democrat Senator Jeff Pittman, voted for the bill. And I'll get back to that in a second. There's a reason I'm telling you that, not just to praise him. I do praise him for making that vote, but that's not why I'm telling you. We sent it to the governor, and as I said, today she vetoed it. Ago. Yeah, why? That's a good question. Yeah, okay, stand by. So the first time that she vetoed it, she said, first, she's not going to vote for a single rate, and second, it's not sustainable, which I don't know what that means. We're sitting on a $3 billion surplus, and it front loads of cost, because you're immediately doing away with food sales tax, you're immediately doing away with the Social Security tax, but then it's a consistent cost in the out years. So it's a little higher in the first year, but then it goes down under like $400 million, which is a lot, or a little over $400 million, which is a lot of money, but the state budget's like $8 billion, and we're sitting on a $3 billion surplus, and we're collecting way more than we're spending every year or every month, frankly, and so we can sustain that. So she didn't want a single rate, so we sent her a double rate, and she sent us back a triple rate and said, I want my triple rate, right? And so she said, well, we'll see if I'll sign this. We need to wait for the revenue estimate to come in. And she was hoping, because the last couple had not been super, she was hoping that this one was going to come in bad. And I just want to say that again. The governor of the state of Kansas was hoping that we came in with bad economic numbers and bad revenue numbers. She was hoping so that she could veto our bill. Well, guess what? Last week, the revenue estimate came in and it was great. We're once again taking in way more than we're spending. So we can afford it. And so now she vetoes it anyways, and she says, well, it's too big. It's too much money. It's the same money as the last one. Too much money. I'm vetoing it, and I'll send you the bill that I want you to pass. Well, I just told you that every single representative in the House, Democrat and Republican, voted for this bill. So we're going to override in the House, even if, there'll be some Democrats that she gets on the phone, she scares them, and they like, oh, I don't want her running somebody against me, so they'll vote with her. But I bet, I'm not a betting man, but I'll bet we get around 100 votes in the House, and we only need 84 to override. So we're going to override in the House. But this comes to why I told you that Senator Pittman voted for the bill the first time. We're going to lose a couple Republicans on this vote, just like we did the last tax bill, and we need his vote. If he votes the way he did right before we went on adjournment at the beginning of the month, we're going to get all those things that I just described. And if he doesn't, we ain't.